we are group number 3 and our topic is metaphors, but our article is a very specific case, that is how metaphors are being described through a very specific case of migrant weddings or wedding scenes of migrants which show metaphors for their homeland. And we thought what better way to start than a video.
Protect my community.
Suffragette man, hate to leave you in the heat.
But what is
That is humorous, no doubt, but it's filled with a lot of metaphors, and we'll look at some of them. Alright, so migrants. Basically, the way migrants have been portrayed in popular media earlier, say in the previous decades or so, has been as people who are very silent, passive, basically as victims of some sort of exploitation who are filled with angst. But nowadays that's slowly changing, and now they're being represented as people who are taking up new values from their host country, but also at the same time retaining some culture and some values from their homeland. So post-colonial migration, because of people migrating from countries which were previously colonized, there's this kind of an dialectic or two-way feeling that they have, which is one of an identity and pride that they carry about their homeland, and at the same time also some kind of an inferiority complex and an envy that they feel for people of the host nation. Okay, now moving to migrant weddings, or in this article we specifically deal with different migrant weddings shown in movies from Turkish movies, German movies, even there's a mention of the Aishwarya Rai movie, that was Pride and Prejudice. So through a lot of movies, scenes have been picked up and they've been described to show what they actually appear like to the audience and what the possible metaphor could be behind this particular scene. So in weddings, especially in migrant weddings, you have a lot of emphasis on what the ideal images of a husband and a wife should be. So the metaphor for this could be that it's a rite of passage, so that they are taught what an ideal husband and wife relationship should be like back in their homeland. And another interesting metaphor would be where you think the celebration of their culture or their religion, like very specific things, maybe the mehendi ceremony or the tradition of circumcision which happens before the wedding. So all of these might appear to be just cultural or religious aspects, but actually they are celebrating what sets them apart. How is it that they are different from everyone else in this host nation? And also, if you look at feast, which is an obvious part of every wedding, fun, frolic, exchange of traditional gifts. So it's just everyday things like eating, sitting together, chatting. But all of these are a kind of bracketing of the homeland of everyday experiences. They kind of take them back to their roots, their what their ancestors and their forefathers used to traditionally do in gatherings. So there's one specific example from a movie, it's a Turkish-German movie, in which the protagonist is fighting with the rest of the family about one tradition, which she thinks is extremely vulgar. It's a tradition where the guests who come to a wedding have to tuck in money in the bride's mother's blouse. So she feels that this is, in the current setting that she's been brought up, she thinks it's absolutely ridiculous. So this shows the metaphor that there's an identity crisis, there's a kind of conflict of morals that they feel between what their homeland culture is and what their host country's traditions or accepted social norms are. And another interesting thing that the article talks about is photos and videotapes, which is again a crucial part of every wedding. And we might think this is one way of just capturing memories, maybe it's a way of just capturing the beautiful moments of your life. But the metaphor is that it's a kind of visual reenactment that happens once this video or picture is sent back to the homeland. Everyone comes around, gathers, and watches this video, and and they start talking about, oh, look at how prosperous my family has become after going to, some other place. They sit down and discuss, they pass comments on what the attendees were wearing, what was the decor like, what was, the scale of the wedding, how grand was it, etc. So this is the metaphor behind the photographs and videos. And another thing is, this is again a specific example where in a movie they start off with, it's an Oriental family, it's I think a Chinese family. So they start off with these classy Western music in the wedding, and slowly as time progresses, they go on to their rustic folk kind of music where everyone literally starts dancing on the tables, and they're like filled up with a sudden burst of energy. So this shows that what was accepted in their host country was, say, a very classy music and very slow kind of music. But it shows a falling apart of the social codes of the host country, where they want to go back to their rustic folk kind of music and feel energetic and feel the fun of a wedding. And another example again is from a movie. This is a German movie. So in this, the elder sister of the bride, she marries someone outside of the community, and she kind of gets ostracized from the family. So she comes back and she talks to the family, and she uses this wedding as a stage where she convinces all of them to take her back. So this is a metaphor for wedding as a stage for reconciliation with the stereotypic migrant character. So by stereotypic migrant character, we would mean someone like the father in DDLJ, Kajol's father, who wants he can't tolerate his child marrying someone outside the community or going against the traditional values, etc. So this article talks about wedding as the stage where there's reconciliation and there's some kind of coming back together in songs. Yeah. Okay, so the symbolic interpretation of weddings. So at the face of it, weddings are all about fun. They are about celebration. They are about a beautiful moment that two people or two families share. But for migrants, it's not just that. It's also a kind of it's acknowledgement of what is missing. It's kind of remembering what is it that they probably don't have right now. Their traditional settings, their traditional values, maybe even small objects which might not be available in this host country. So wedding, the author talks about wedding as a space for lamenting the lost homeland. And he calls it it's a state of melancholia, which is a pathological reaction after an essential loss. So you might think that you have recovered from this loss, but during certain spurts or occasions, you remember that, no, this is still missing from my life. And wedding is the best occasion where you're transported back into this state. And talking about aesthetics, so there's a kind of a parallel drawn between consumption and weddings, where consumption is always associated with how aesthetics are very important and advertising, branding, etc. But also in weddings, they kind of use this as an avenue to tell the whole world about their identity through small things like the colors, the decor, what the bride and groom are wearing, probably the way they carry themselves. All these small things which are the subtle components of aesthetics, they kind of help these migrants just shout loud about their identity to the rest of the world. It's an artistic expression of sorts. So this was about the specific case of metaphors in migrant weddings. Now we move on to metaphors in a managerial context.
So we just saw that how weddings are used to signify something in terms of diaspora. Metaphors have a lot of place in managerial context as well. So here are some examples. First of all, when organizations are seen as machines. So if we take an example of McDonald's, Pizza Hut, KFC, everywhere, we see that there is a consistency in the products they serve. So what maintains that consistency? It is a machine. So that is how they project themselves, and this is how they are perceived. And there are other organizations that compete solely on cost, service and quality, and they do not really innovate. So what does not evolve is a machine. So this is how the organizations are using these metaphors. We also see the terms commonly associated with a lot of terms like efficiency, waste, maintenance, all the operation strategy terms we come across. They are all associated nothing other than machinations and which cannot be really related to a person, but something inanimate. And that is what a metaphor of machine is associated to an organization. next we cover how business attires are used as a metaphor for credibility in our organizations. So we know these guys, right? So they are all actors, but if we do not know them and they come to us in whatever they are wearing in that attire, we might be fooled by their appearances. We might take them as real lawyers. So business attire is simply a signifier in our in the current scenario. What credibility is signified, but this is not exactly. This is exactly a game of illusion because credibility does not come with the suit. It is in our minds, and it is known as expert policy. And what these corporates take advantage of. If you, I can show you a video for that.
We're about to put the expert fallacy to the test. Comedian Jay Painter is posing as a reporter, complete with suit, microphone, and camera. We want to see if those cues are powerful enough to make folks believe some absurd news stories that he's made up. Think you wouldn't fall for it? Let's watch.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Jay Painter, National Geographic News Network. I was just wondering if I could ask you a quick question.
Absolutely.
Sir, as I'm sure you heard this morning, Texas has announced that they are seceding from the United States.
Is that correct?
Yes. Can I just get your reaction on this?
I'm very disappointed.
So what we saw that the form is that the suit gives us credibility, but the content is that it is in our mind. We are being fooled by our own minds, and it has got nothing to do with the suits. Another metaphor that we daily come across in our lives is GDP. GDP is usually associated with the economic progress of a nation, how progressive a nation is. But if we, it does not take into account the destruction and construction after a destruction that has taken place. So the form is like, right, Afghanistan did grow 21% in the year 2009, but we know the story, that why did it grow 21%? Because somebody just, America just let it in, pushed it into minus, and then yes, it reached 21%. There are countries like Britain and Italy that include prostitution, drugs and gun sales in their GDP accounts. So we cannot really call that GDP is a measure of progress. But in a real scenario, it is generally used. So now Akash will talk about our framework.
So based on what these people discussed, we have created this framework, and we think it's quite relevant. I don't know how you guys might find it, but yeah. So the text mentions why there has been this notion of anti-diaspora and exiles. I mean the migrant communities which are living in their hosting nations, they are happy. I mean they are well off financially as well as non-financially, but still they love their homeland and they long for their homeland. And why this is because they have a feeling of being distinctive, and there is a sense of belongingness in them, and they have pride in one's culture, in their cultural heritage. Now, the feeling of being distinctive is because they have their they have their excuse me, I'm sorry about this. Yeah, they have a feeling of distinctiveness because their likes and dislikes are very different from what the people whom the migrant countries are, and there is a sense of belongingness. Like in the text, it is mentioned that all these migrant communities during the wedding, when they come together, what they do, they come together to share their own cultural heritage, as well as there has been something in their mind that they have been oppressed by their colonials. So there is one common notion in all these three things, and all these notions notions, these arguments, this converge to one thing which is called identity. So that's what our framework is called, is framework of identity. And why this is better? It is because this is more general and we can apply it to the frameworks which I already mentioned before. Like you can say GDP can be used as an identity for progress, business attire as an identity of credibility, and organizations as identity for machines. Now we'll see how different organizations and companies have used this concept of identity for their own advantage. Now, why identity in the first place? Now, there are like 200 plus countries in the world. But there cannot be one single country, obviously, because every country is characterized by its own language, own traditions. They have different weather conditions, they have different likes and dislikes. So, this concept of identity associated with the country has been used by many corporations, mainly multinationals, to expand their operations and increase their global reach. So, we'll now see how identity has been used as a metaphor or symbol for various brands. Now, you can see this BMW car. Now, what comes to your mind when you see this? It probably belongs to a guy who is rich, guy or girl, woman, probably belongs to the so-called Seike of the social strata. But this is unaffordable for middle class. So, what companies like Tata, what they did? They manufactured this Tata Nano. Now, Ratan Tata said that why he built it? Because he wanted to give an identity to these people so that they can rise, so that they can show the world that they have risen to the middle class and upper middle class. Then identity as a means of brand offerings. Now we'll mainly talk about many multinational corporations, how they have used the identities of different countries in changing their offerings. So for example, Starbucks, it entered India a few years back, and what they did is India already had CCD and they had faced lots of competition. So Starbucks cannot just bring their global offerings directly into India. So they had to localize to crack Indian coffee market. So what they did? So they designed. So they had aesthetic design based on local themes. So let's say Starbucks coffee shop in Pune showcases copper art structures, so as to show the cultural heritage of the city. Also, they have introduced a lot of local foods and beverages. India being one of the primary tea consuming nations, so they have introduced chai lattes along with coffee lattes, kebabs, etc. Another well-known example is McDonald's. It's known worldwide for its local theme across the world, because India is a country which is obsessed with spicy food, so they have introduced Makalu Tikki, Masala Grill, and maybe in China, Japan, they will introduce noodles, rice based on their likings. So here we'll see how various brands have used this strong concept of identity, brand identity, as a differentiator. So there are in products, with respect to products and services, there are like thousands of categories, and each categories have hundreds of brands, and which are very cluttered. So how the brands on these slides have gained a differentiation? It is because they have been able to create an identity around themselves, and this has been done because of their brand positioning. So what we can learn from this is, if you want to gain the attention of the customers, and if you want to retain that attention, you have to create a sense of identity revolving your brand with the help of brand positioning. Then so all that I was talking about identity. So how powerful is the concept of identity? This was for this an experiment was done. It's called as blind taste test. In this, what they did is they gave people soft drinks once when they were blinded and once they were not blinded. Every person was given a Pepsi and a Coke. So when people were blinded, people preferred the taste of Pepsi or Coke, and they were unblinded, people preferred Coke or Pepsi. And we know that Coke is like one of the top 5 brands. So This is the power of an identity which is given to a brand. It can change an individual taste. So, bottom line is, all I'm trying to say, all in all, is that an identity is something which companies are using. Which companies are using to give their products or services a differentiation which they can use for their advantage.